just interested to know about the wage and salary levels compared to the other centres that you're talking about, as far as cost of business and the types of people that are attracted to the area.
Yep. I haven't actually looked at average incomes. You can do that with the data that's out of the 2011 census. It's always best to benchmark. So I would, you know, those 5 towns that I had, Wagga, Gladstone, I can't remember, whatever they were. I'd be benchmarking average income levels in Coffs with each one of those and just seeing how you compare. And the same with other whole series of benchmark, you know, like rent per square metre and a whole series of, that's the way a business would do it. That's the way I'd run it. If I was CEO of a business, that's the way I would do it. What are these figures in Gladstone, what are those figures in Dubbo or Wagga or whatever. But I can do it, but I haven't done it for this exercise. Any others? Yep.
One of the problems I find in Coffs Harbour is so fragmented. You've got Woolgoolga and you've got Sawtell and you've got the jetty and you've got Coffs Harbour and you've got the plaza. So what happens is when any vision or a strategy is put in place, it's all about targeting and satisfying different groups rather than satisfying one area that's really the heart of the area to actually make the town grow. And when we compete with Port Macquarie, for instance, Port Macquarie actually have theirs all centralised in one area.
Well, and Port Macquarie within Hastings.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, to a certain degree, I think I can see that, the geographic distribution, but there are other places in Australia that have it worse. Go to Wingecarribee, Mossvale, Bowral, Mittagong. 3 areas of roughly the same thing. At least Coffs Harbour is like the dominant one. You've got these smaller communities around it. I do get that. The other issue is, maybe with the council in the room should talk about, what are the prospects for amalgamation in New South Wales? I mean, Kennett did it in 1994. South Australia did it in God knows when. West Australia are now talking about it in the next 10 years. Is it possible? Is it feasible? We'll be talking about Coffs Harbour. We'll be talking about a greater regional council area. What might that look like? How would that change the paradigm? But again, I do take the point, and this comes down to leadership. Visionary, passionate, committed leadership. Not just the words. I want to see that leader with his neck, or her neck, her family, her business, his business, absolutely committed. I want to see all the cards on the table, everything on the table behind my community. That's when I'll believe you. Yes, you're right.
I was curious about the graph that you had all the professional and the healthcare worker down one end and the other end that was falling off with the agriculture and manufacturing.
Yep.
Now, given that, like, there's also 1 million people who are normally employed in that area, what happens to them if there's no focus given to that area? And what happens to production of food or, you know, our manufacturing? Is it worth putting some focus in there just to have it?
This is a strategic discussion I would have if I got federal cabinet ministers. We are a nation that is yielding our capacity to build stuff, to make stuff. The reason why Wollongong exists is because we needed a steel industry. What happens if, just think, you know, we're complacent here. What happens if there is a war? Who do we depend on? The US. What if those sea lanes are cut? How do we build stuff, like stuff you need for war? We can't do that. We used to know how to do it, we don't do it now. I think we need to start thinking strategically about which industries, in which locations, strategically we need to protect. Yeah, they're not as cheap as Chinese labour, but damn it, we're going to pay them a premium because we want that skill in Australia. They're the sort of big picture strategic decisions that the Department of Defence should be having with the Prime Minister. If there's anyone left in Defence after it's been decimated by what's happened over the last 2 months or so. But yes, this strategic issue around manufacturing, I think, is critical. Not so much retail, and there's probably retailers in the room. But the reality is, I think that by 2020, if not earlier, 20% of Australian retail sales about $200 billion, maybe $20 billion a year, is now channelled online. If 20% of retail sales is online, why would that not mean that 20% of retail jobs disappear? You can go to any suburb, any town, in any place on the Australian continent, and there is a job in retailing for a 15-year-old without any skills. You take that away, what does Australia look like? So look at some big picture issues at a national level. Let's leave the national level to the Prime Minister. Let's focus on the Coffs Harbour issues. Any other thoughts or observations? Queries? Yeah.
Yes, I don't know how helpful this is going to be to the forum, but one of my observations this morning, I looked around the room, and apart from my old mate Stan Daisy over there, I was the odd man out. We come from a different age group. And the thing that worries me is with the advancement of technology and that everybody's leaping to the future, but nobody's worrying about the past. And the past has still got some lessons. And I think that it's a shame that it's not about living in the past, it's about valuing the past. And I think that there's a lot of things. I'm wondering now what's going to happen, whether we're going to have an upstairs, downstairs type program to tell people what Australia used to be. And advancement is certainly good, but I want to put the brakes on some of these things a little. Incidentally, about 20 years ago, I grew bok choy and I couldn't sell it.
Look, I think what you say about that generation, I have the greatest respect for that generation that fought in the Second World War and beyond. Unbelievable. Demographers in the US call them the greatest generation. Unbelievable sacrifice. The things that I would like to take from that generation and instill in this generation are things like the concepts of service. It's not about me, it's about you. 1961, January 1961, JFK at his inauguration said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country." That resonated with a depression and war generation. You subjugate what you want for the greater good. Could you imagine Julia Gillard get out saying, "It's not about you, it's about the community. It's all now about me." So instead of me-focused, community-focused, and this whole issue of frugality, austerity, modesty in behaviour and thinking, that we've lost all that. So there are some tremendous values from that generation. There are other issues that I'm happy to leave in the past, like sexism and attitudes to Indigenous communities and so forth. We've moved on from. It'd be great to actually take the good bits and bring that forward, and to actually get rid of what I think are the bad bits today. Imagine if you could create a community in Coffs Harbour that was selfless, giving, that was not me-focused or hedonistic. What sort of community could you create? That, to me, is part of this process. It's not about, what industry can we get from Melbourne or Sydney. It's about the type of community we want to create in this community.